We now have joining us Jason Keeley, Rob McCurry, and Chris Sims. So without any further delay, here is Starfinder Adventure Path Q&A.
Hi, everybody.
Woo! Here we are.
Hello, Twitch.
So this is the Starfinder Adventure Path Q&A. I'm Rob McCrary, the creative director for Starfinder. I don't know which direction it goes.
I'm Jason Keeley, a Starfinder developer.
I'm Chris Sims, a Starfinder developer.
And in particular, they are our main Adventure Path developers. So if here at the Adventure Path panel, we do have, there is probably going to be spoilers because we like to talk about what's in the Adventure Paths. So if you're going to be playing in them, try to keep that player character knowledge separate. But yeah, we're just going to kind of talk about everything that we can about the Adventure Paths and answer your questions and all that kind of stuff. So what Adventure Path are we in the middle of right now?
Dawn of Flame.
Dawn of Flame.
The Blind City releases this month. I think you can get it on Paizo.com already.
Sounds legit.
It's
next Wednesday, I think.
Next Wednesday?
Yeah, you can get the print version. You can order the print version now, but I think you have to wait till Wednesday to get the PDF. And the next one will be Solar Strike, and the final one will be called Assault on the Crucible. And in the Blind City, you go to a creepy place that's a prison for some mysterious being in the sun.
Where is it again?
Inside the sun.
Right, the entire Adventure Path takes place or almost the entire Adventure Path takes place inside the sun, which is, a pretty standard adventuring location. But we thought it'd be good to go back to that well. So
it's a pretty standard.
yeah.
I think you're being
Who's
facetious.
adventured inside the sun? Yeah, no, all right.
No.
Hasn't everyone?
Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
And after that, you go to an alien city inside the sun.
Inside the sun.
And save them from evil. And then you go to the source of that evil in the final Assault on the Crucible. And hopefully defeat that, but you won't because it's really hard.
All right, what else is cool and anything you've worked on?
Oh,
from the
yeah.
back matter
So
for Dawn of
definitely coming up, I think it's in Blind City, is our weird gear, strange gear article, which has got some stuff in it. It's full of some gear that your players basically might have a little bit of a cost to use, or are just generally strange and unusual from strange and unusual places, or leftovers from other lost civilizations or what have you. My favorite part about that, though, is of course the Replenigel Mega Vitamin. It is a gummy vitamin that is about a pound in size and is shaped like a Skittermander. There is art for it in there. So finally, we have gummy Skittermanders. I'm sorry, Rob, to tell you this.
but I didn't realize that they were a pound. I thought they were regular.
They take a full
size
10 minutes
gummy.
to eat.
I thought they were regular gummy vitamins.
Mega vitamin. So you eat it, you're full for the day, obviously, because you've just eaten a pound of gummy, and it gives you a little bit of a boost. But if you eat too many of them in a week, you get a kind of like a gummy sheen to your body, and you start sweating goo.
Are they addictive?
They're not addictive, but they're also just they're simpler and to eat than maybe a little more tasty than MREs, but.
We've got a lot of new outsiders coming in because of
all the
the
genies,
sun.
all the planar scions from the elemental planes are playable.
Yeah, so you can play
And-
Ifrits and Sylphs and
Yep, and
Boreads and
an entire new alien species is detailed in Solar Strike.
That's right.
Where they live, who they are, and they are also playable after that adventure releases.
sweet.
It's pretty cool stuff. What else is in number? There's an Asinoi, and then the other article in that one is something. I can't remember. It's been so long.
Well, that's fine.
You mean in number 17?
Yeah, the fifth adventure. I can't remember what else is in that one.
That was you.
I know I developed it, but I can't remember now. I'm really focused on the following adventure path, and that's where my brain is right now. I didn't read notes on Dawn of Flame at all because I didn't think I was getting any questions.
Well, speaking of the
Yeah.
next adventure path, then what
not to
comes
finish on
after Dawn of Flame?
Dawn of Flame. So what comes after Dawn of Flame is Attack of the Swarm! Exclamation points. We made sure to fight fight hard for that exclamation point. The editors didn't have to fight that hard. The editors were pretty happy to be like, oh sure, we'll do that. And this is the final the adventure path where we talk about the swarm threats. It's one of our big threats. They are interstellar locusts, for lack of a better word, who just descend on civilizations and other planets and just kind of eat and consume and drain the resources from a planet and then move on. But this time they're acting a little strange. So we'll be getting into that. The adventure path begins in the sort of a new system, the Suscalon system. It's out in the vast, but it has some friendly ties to the Pact Worlds and the Veskarium. So if you are from those areas, you might be. You can easily travel there. They have not wanted to be a protectorate of the Pact Worlds just yet. They're afraid that might lose their autonomy. So they don't have any sort of like defense treaties, which hurts them when the swarm attacks the main planet. And just sort of comes down and kind of begins just tearing the place apart. And that's where the adventure path begins. About 6 months later, the PCs are soldiers. Whether they're, maybe they're career soldiers or maybe they were conscripted in because everyone's got to fight this war to save the planet, and they become part of this the 5th Battalion, and sort of that took the most heavy losses in a previous battle. So they're just sort of getting anyone they can in, and they form their own squad and they've got to do some stuff, and it's a real war-heavy kind of like military-focused adventure where you've got to just sort of fight back the swarm and get from place to place, and eventually, and this is where I will spoiler it a little bit. There's a threat. The swarm is a big threat, so they very well just take over the planet, and your PCs are basically just fighting a losing war at the beginning here, getting pushed back further, and eventually have to evacuate. And with that, this is one of the reasons I didn't want to set this in the Pact Worlds, because I really wanted to mess up a planet. I wanted the planet to be basically hopelessly lost by the end of the first adventure, and so we just sort of created some new areas, some new place, and that is the first adventure is called Fate of the Fifth. It'll be available this August. It is written by Patrick Brennan, the GM of the Cosmic Crit podcast. He's written a couple other things for me before, and I listened to their podcast and I kind of like what he was doing. So I asked him if he was interested in writing. He's like, war movies are my favorite type of movie, he said. And I was like, terrific, because they're not mine, and somehow I got stuck with writing the war AP, developing the war AP, which is why this goes to some weird places. I do like the occasional war movie, and I think it does sort of have that gritty war feeling at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle, we'll get to that. And should I just go into further detail?
Sure, although I think I want to follow up on one thing. You said you wanted, one of the reasons why you went away from the Pact Worlds, I think it's also because in the history of the setting, the Swarm already attacked the Pact Worlds in the Veskarium, and that was just like 17 years ago, well, maybe 20-something years ago. Yeah. So it'd be kind of weird if they immediately came back when that's kind of the sort of past history that sort of helped build the alliance between the Pact Worlds and the Veskarium. So it seemed weird to have like the Swarm come back right away. Yeah. So it's like, well, we'll shift it somewhere else off also so you can destroy a planet.
So I can really mess things up,
You lack an overwhelming military response from the Pact Worlds allied with the Veskarium.
Right, exactly. So. It would be too easy if they...
Right, like together they drove off the Swarm once before, why wouldn't they do it again?
So. And one of the NPCs that is basically your commanding officer at the very beginning of the first adventure is a veteran of the war. He's a Vesk who fought with the Veskarium, and he's moved to this planet because he wants to kill Swarm. He's like, I want to kill some more Swarm. It doesn't go well for him. And in that particular volume too, we actually have an article that is essentially a player's guide. It's something that as GMs you can print it up and give straight to your players. It says, Suscalon, here it is, and what it's about, what the Suscalon Defense Force is, why you might be there. Here's a bunch of connections to the Defense Force based on theme. Here are 2 new themes. Here's a bunch of gear you might be able to buy at first level that is sort of military theme, like wake up patches and stims and stuff like that, and a bunch of cool magic not badges, like medals of honor, basically, that you might get as the adventure goes along. And then we talk about the Swarm in general. We give a little more information about the Swarm.
Yeah, the origin of the Swarm, where it came from. How it evolves, what its components are, and why they exist and how they exist, and how the Swarm assimilates all the genetic material of the flora and fauna it destroys and consumes.
And that basically allows this. And Swarm is a very adaptable threat in that they just sort of make themselves to whatever it needs to be. And as we progress, going into this, we had 3 swarm creatures in a swarm starship from Alien Archive 1 and Alien Archive 2, and that is all the swarm creatures we had. So each of these volumes contains at least 2 or 3 new swarm creatures and sometimes spaceships that run the gamut from humanoid looking to not so humanoid looking, full beetles and things that I realized that in the first volume that they kind of look like graboids. And they do burrow, so I was like, oh no. And now John and Thirsty are like, we have to do a Tremors scenario. I'm like, okay. So that maybe look for that in the near future. We had actually just watched they're still making Tremors movies. There was one that came out like last year. Michael Gross is in it, and for some reason Jamie Kennedy. And it takes place in the Arctic, even though it's clearly in Southern California. Anyway, watch that movie if you want to see Michael Gross's butt. I'll just say that. Yeah. Anyways, moving on.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here. We continue on. Once they have basically sort of commandeered a spaceship off of Susclon and gotten off with some other refugees that the PCs head out to. So the Susclon system has only the one fully inhabited world, but they've got a small colony on 2 planets away where basically the military has retreated to. Everyone who's survived the evacuation has gone to sort of, and that sort of put a bunch of pressure on this essentially colony metropolis. And that adventure is called The Last Refuge by Marlon Butler. It basically takes place on this city, in this metropolis. You're sort of brought in, you have a new commander. She's basically like, okay, there's basically some rioting happening because of all these refugees that have come in. There's a weird kind of cultish kind of group that's like, oh, we deserve to be killed by the swarm. And they're messing things up, so you've got to put an end to them. And eventually you sort of start to... in the process, you've rescued this Shirin priest of Hylax, who's like, the swarm are acting very strange. Normally they just sort of take a planet and leave, and they sort of seem to be sticking at Susclon. What's going on? So we start to get into a little bit more about Hylax and the Shirin exodus from the swarm, because they used to be part of the swarm and they broke off. You explore some caves that underneath this city that no one had known about for decades, for centuries even, and that sort of gives you a little more information about what happened to the Shirin as they left the swarm. And this particular adventure has very little swarm activity in it. It's sort of a break after the slog of the first adventure, where your main antagonists are almost just regular people who are panicking because of the war. So that one kind of pulls away from the dark, gritty, like frontline sort of situation to the sort of behind your own lines and working with the consequences of war and that sort of thing. And eventually you get some good mystic stuff going on too. What?
I said darker and grittier. Consequences of war.
Yeah, I know. That in the back we talk again more about just the Shirin. That in detail we have an article about the exodus from their how they got away from the swarm back. Basically at the end of the gap, the beginning of after gap time. And there's another article in that one too.
The Church of Hylax.
The Church of is that one?
I thought
that was in the that's in 4th volume.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Somewhere there's a Church of Hylax.
There's a Church of Hylax article.
Hylax, yeah. No, that's the next one. Anyway, at the end of the Last Refuge, you get some sort of clue about something called the Forever Reliquary that used to be sort of thought of as just sort of a metaphor, but it's maybe an actual physical place, and maybe that has something to do with what the swarm, which is sort of led by this thing that you don't quite know what it is yet. You're sort of getting hints at the beginning of something called the God Host, this sort of leader of the swarm subcolony that is doing something to try to maybe usurp Hylax's power in some fashion. You learn that basically what has happened is that the swarm is sort of retracing the Shirin exodus backwards, back to where from a place heading back to where the Shirin escaped the swarm, and so one of the places where they've been is in another system, which also happens to be home to a professor who knows something about the Forever Reliquary. So in the 3rd volume, Huskworld. By Liz Liddell, you've got to go behind enemy lines, essentially, to this planet, another system that has been attacked by the swarm like in the previous year and is now just a mess.
is just occupied by swarm, which is not something they usually do. They usually don't stick around too long to get the resources out of the planet, but now you've got to go there, and you meet some people who are basically surviving on the ground, who managed to go underground before the attack and then come back up. So you're meeting a lot of fun bug people in this one. And this particular planet, known as Ilim Chuva, was a Sheeran colony, for one of the first Sheeran colonies back in the day. I'm really going into a lot of detail. Tell me if I'm saying too much, Rob.
You could maybe bring it back a little bit.
I'll bring it back down a little bit. So Husk World's really great because you're fighting a lot of swarm here. You actually go inside of a giant swarm creature. You go to the university where the professor is to sort of find out what his research is all about and help the survivors there fight back a bit and maybe get a better foothold for the future. In that one, we talk about some survivors, other survivors of the swarm, and this whole system has been ravaged by the swarm attacks. So we give you some snapshots of the other planets.
And the back matter article describes the entire system.
Yeah.
And describes some of the relics that are left over and how the planets are after the swarm left them behind. And the other back matter article is one of my favorites, which is other survivors of the swarm and how they survived contact with the swarm.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool stuff. More fun swarm enemies in the back there. And then we move on. Eventually, the PC's in. The next volume is called The Forever Reliquary by Kate Baker. And you actually sort of, this thing is on some kind of comet, this whatever it is. So you've got to track this comet down, but the professor's research isn't fully there. So you've got to do some space stuff, tracing this comet. You eventually land there. It turns out there's a temple of Hylax on it. The Sheeran landed on this comet sort of way back in the day, and sort of this is where they met Hylax in the first place. And she was like, "I bless you, my children. You're my children. I bring you back to my flock." And so eventually they sort of moved underground into the interior of the comet. And there's this monastery known as the Forever Reliquary, where you basically do some trials of Hylax, which end up being sort of like first contact and diplomacy and stuff like that. And eventually you eventually get the blessings of Hylax, but before you can move any further, the swarm attack the comet. So then you've got to fight the swarm off inside the reliquary, hopefully save everybody. And then this is where it gets even weirder. Because at the end of that particular, this is the Church of Hylax article, I think.
It is the Church of Hylax article.
And other monasteries around the galaxy. At the end of this particular adventure, you have to take this artifact known as the Crown of Hylax into a mindscape that represents the swarm hive mind. So Hive of Minds, adventure number 5 by Thurston Hillman, it takes place entirely inside a mindscape, which is a psychic projection of what the swarm hive mind is like. And if you can get this Crown of Hylax to what we're calling the connection, the connection of the God Host subcolony to the main swarm colony, you might be able to disrupt the Suscalon subcolony enough to fight back. And it's full of weird things, this particular, because reality is not real in this world, in the mindscape. So eventually the PCs are able to manipulate it a bit here and there. You actually meet someone who's also bodily there as a survivor, and she's got a real Mad Max vibe to her.
How close is this mindscape to your own mind?
75%. Yes, my mindscape is basically a big desert full of termite mounds and weird storms. Eventually, the PCs will succeed at that, defeating this gigantic creature, put the Crown of Hylax on it, and disrupt the swarm subcolony. And then in the final volume, The God Host Descends by Ron Nundine, you get to take back Suscalon. So you're basically you've done enough that the army's like, yeah, let's help. You want to help me? The commander's like, let's figure out what to do. You're able to sort of deploy things in certain fashions. You land back on Suscalon, take it back, and eventually defeat maybe the God Host, who is a massive thing. And that's it.
All right.
Yeah. So that's a lot of detail about that attack. So they printed up the thing, and I'm very excited about it.
I remembered what the back matter article was in the second one.
Okay, what's that?
Biomechanical starships.
Oh, the biomechanical starships. Yes, yeah, those look pretty cool. Some Raxolite starships.
Raxolite starships, some Xenodruid starships. So.
Which I think Raxolites are in Alien Archive 3, so whoops.
Yep.
So that takes us, Attack of the Swarm takes us through January of 2020, and then, even though this is still several months away, we have our first AP of 2020, which launches in February 2020, and that is called...
The Threefold Conspiracy.
Threefold Conspiracy.
And the Threefold Conspiracy focuses on the unseen, the Greys, the Reptoids, and fungal entities called the Decepskians. And it starts out with your characters on a starship transport, and somebody disappears on that transport, leading to a mystery that you have to solve. And that volume is called The Chimera Mystery. And it's by our very own Jason Keeley.
Gotta get on that.
Yeah.
I've read it. It's fine.
And the characters explore the various. So the Unseen are not allied. The gray aliens are not allied with the Reptoids, and they're not allied with none of them are allied with the Decepticons. Who made up that name?
Who wrote that name? It wasn't.
We didn't.
Yeah.
So they're not allied. So there are all sorts of machinations that the players have to unfold and find out about and thwart. And they're actually related to each other only by the character's own story, which I'm not going to reveal yet. The second volume is called Flight of the Sleepers, and that is by Owen K.C. Stevens. The third volume is Deceiver's Moon, and that's by Jason Tondro. And then we have one called The Hollow Cabal, and that's by Crystal Frazier. The Cradle Infestation by Vanessa Hoskins. And the final volume is called Puppets Without Strings, and that is by Landon Winkler.
So yeah, this is all about conspiracy theories and kind of taken to the galactic extreme. So lots of mystery, I would say.
Yeah, and we encourage the authors to look at real-world conspiracy theories involving these creatures, because there are theories about reptoids on Earth and greys on Earth, and there's plenty of at least science fiction about fungal entities that take over humanoid bodies. So
Yeah. They're very cordyceps, fungus type entities.
And the cool thing about the Decepticons is that the only way this species gains sapience is by taking over the bodies and minds of sapient creatures. So alone, they aren't sapient. They discovered sapience by taking over sapient creatures, and now they want to keep it. So that's pretty cool.
I just want to tease everyone by saying that the Threefold conspiracy is even more bonkers than what happens in Attack of the Swarm.
It's a mindscape in every volume.
Not a mindscape. Maybe, you never know.
We've kind of tried to set it up so it's almost like, like peeling an onion or layers of an onion. Hopefully the PCs they'll think they've figured it out, and no, they've just uncovered another conspiracy and get deeper and deeper into it.
So we designed that on purpose. So it's almost every volume, if not every volume, is at the end of it, the players should be like, what? So,
and just get deeper. So we'll be talking more about that later, because this is in 2020, but we wanted to announce that as the next unannounced AP.
And it's really hard to describe the story of this adventure path without spoiling some major things we're not gonna.
Okay.
Not yet.
So I think we can open it up to questions now. If anybody has about the stuff we've talked about, or about old APs that we've done, or about adventure paths in general and that kind of stuff, we're happy to. Oh, we even have a microphone.
Yeah, we
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, am I on, Perrin?
You're on.
All right, great. Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a Zerg Titan on the forums. My sort of question is in regards to a pattern I was sort of seeing happen with the current adventure path and the upcoming Attack of the Swarm adventure path, and that is that you're starting to do the deity articles in the case of at least adapting Pathfinder deities to the current setting and introducing the new deities as well in the case of Hylax in the upcoming adventure path. Will we be seeing additional deity articles beyond that? And would you be willing to maybe hint at what DD article might be in the adventure path that was just revealed, or maybe just say conspiracy? I don't know.
That's fair.
I don't think there is a D&D article in the Threefold conspiracy.
There isn't one in the Threefold. We'll do them as we find them to be appropriate to the adventures, essentially. And I think what we've been doing to sort of keep ourselves separate from the Pathfinder one is that our articles are more or less about the church of that deity, less about the deity itself and its manifestation and where it lives. I think we go into it a little bit with Hylax because she's new, but with the Sarenrae one that's in number 13, it's mostly just about who worships Sarenrae nowadays, and what are some other places you might find worshippers Sarenrae and what they do. That's sort of part of the deity article from Pathfinder APs that talk about a priest's role and those sort of churches and their churches' relationships with other churches.
Yeah, and our articles kind of talk about more of the societal effect and also a lot of cool relics and
we go into that or do a kind of mystic connection or some other player focus.
Spells.
Yeah.
But it's driven by the content of if it matches with the AP. We're not trying to do it in every AP. We're going to do one of these articles, at least at this point, because if it fits like Hylax and the Sheeran and the Swarm, that's very thematic. So one of the reasons why we ordered Saren Ray and the Sun for Dawn of Flame.
Another question from Twitch from the Silver Scarab. Will Adventure Paths go to level 20 soon? Thoughts on that?
That's so right now, not all of our adventure paths, because there's one that's an exception, but they pretty much go to 13th level. We are trying. We're looking into that. We know that that's kind of one of the holes in our product lines. We don't have anything for high level. We haven't quite worked all that out yet, and we don't have anything to announce. But it is something we're definitely interested in and want to get at some point, because I mean, even Pathfinder just got to level 20 with.
Return of the Rune Lords.
There we go. I was like, what verb with Rune Lords is it?
What are words?
What are we? Yeah. So we do want to do that. We don't have anything to announce at this point yet.
All right. I noticed that you went back to 6-part scenarios. Are you moving away from the 3s? Is there not going to be another Single of Screams or Aeon Throne type thing?
This is another thing that we don't have a good answer for yet. We kind of tried the 3-volume APs as an experiment, and I know a lot of fans like them. There's some other things. We'd still like to do them. It's kind of just trying to fit them into the schedule and our production schedule. So, again, so far with what we've announced, these are all 6-volume APs. Hopefully we can get back to a few 3. I think maybe we'll kind of do mixes as we can, but I think the 6 parts are still primarily going to be the thing, and maybe every once in a while we'll be able to do a 3-part.
We do have some stories that would be good for 3 parters and stuff like that. So
it just becomes a bit tricky with the workload a bit. Is that you have to make, if you're doing 2 3-volume APs, for instance, in a row, you've got to write twice as many to outline. It's not necessarily twice as much work, but it is more than the work than for writing 1 6-volume AP. It's tricky, but it was definitely a fun challenge.
Yeah.
At the time.
So you guys mentioned in the Swarm AP that one of the main NPCs that you'll be meeting is a Veskarium that was in the war against the Swarm earlier with the Pack Worlds. Will there be more information on like some of the homeworlds in the Veskarium, or just the system in general that will be able to be linked in through some of those, or would that be like a splat book similar to the Pack Worlds?
There's not going to be anything like that in Attack of the Swarm, but maybe in the future. So we have the Pack Worlds book. That is something we'd probably want to do in the future, right, Rob?
Probably. Yeah, for other places in the galaxy.
Yeah, for other places in the galaxy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's we eventually we'll probably get to that stuff, but not really as part of this adventure path.
I'm going to combine 2 Twitch questions into one because
read
they're
every
very
word
similar.
from every a word from every other one.
I'm not going to. Listen, you might get that, Keely. I don't think Rob or Chris would, so I'm not going to do that.
Thanks, Alex.
You're welcome. So both people want to know if you have plans for Adventure Path set with 2 specific themes. The first theme is the Veskarium. Like, are we going to do a Veskarium AP? The other one is Android Freedom Fighters.
They're on we have a big list.
yeah,
right?
we have a giant list.
And those, I think, are on the list somewhere.
Yeah,
So in some fashion.
It's true. We do have a giant list, and what we tend to do 2 APs a year, of course. So we only get 2 marked off the list, and then we come up with other ideas get added to the list. So it kind of seems where we are, what goes with other products. I would say with something like a Veskarium focused AP, would we want to detail the Veskarium all in the back matter articles of an AP, or would we want to detail the Veskarium in a bigger thing? And so I think if we get to that point, once we have, because we haven't really said much about the Veskarium yet, I would think we'd want to have the Veskarium kind of in place before we would set an AP there, just so we don't have to fill up the AP with just all of that information.
I think it is possible that our giant list gets longer every time.
Yeah, we
Shorter.
think about
Even though we cross off 2, we come up with like 5 more
Yeah.
ideas. So.
True.
And we like having the Pack Worlds book out was an impetus for get Chris excited about developing the Dawn of Flame adventure path. All this stuff about the sun is awesome. So once we have like a bunch of awesome stuff about the Veskarium or other near space worlds or whatever, we'll have 20 more things to add to the list, right? So.
And it's also just like we have this big list, but we haven't actually plotted out everything. I mean, we do have to go a bit in advance because, like, we're talking about 2020 with the Threefold conspiracy. But at a certain point, it gets counterproductive to actually lock things in because nobody else at the company has locked anything in for that. So we have to be able to change and modify, or something comes up that becomes really popular, or we get really inspired by, and then that determines what we're going to do or what we think the fans will like too.
I guess I was wondering if you had any thoughts on adventures set in or around Aposte or Akaton.
On our list, there is definitely some Aposte. There's Aposte and Akaton. It's always kind of
Aposte would make a great delve into
Super
the planet dungeon type
Yeah.
Starfinder setting. So mega dungeon Starfinder.
one of the things is always trying to find sort of like a mix. Like Dead Suns was, since that was the first AP, we wanted kind of to show off the whole scale of the setting. So that starts in the Pact Worlds, and you go from Absalom Station, then you visit Castrovel and see some of the planets, and then you go out further and further and further, to kind of show that whole scope. And so it's kind of one of the things with Dawn of Flame takes place in the Pact Worlds, but it's really focused on the sun. So because that's in the Pact Worlds, we wanted to do something different with Attack of the Swarm. That takes us out into the vast. Threefold Conspiracy is sort of bringing us back to the Pact Worlds again. So it's always kind of looking at just that and not trying. We don't want to put everything in the same area. So it's kind of jumping back and forth. I'd like to eventually get to Akaton and Aposte to set something in there.
Road Warriors of Akaton.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. There's no roads on Akaton.
This next question is also a combination question from Lava Being and Doc Wash on Twitch. Lava Being wants to know, with the success of the Kingmaker Kickstarter, whether or not the team would think about adding content for after an adventure path ends as an additional product they could buy, like maybe a 7th volume in Dead Suns or something like that.
As a Kickstarter? Is that what they were?
I think just in general, but if you want to field it as a Kickstarter, sure.
We haven't thought about that. We could, one thing, part of it is because we have our subscriptions and everything, and if you add some kind of other product, like a 7th volume or something, that kind of gets in the way. And it's also, from a business perspective, I don't know if someone would want to get part 7 of something from that. I think a more likely thing would be something like what we did with Against the Aeon Throne and Signal of Screams, which is set another adventure path that starts at the same thing. That's like if we did some kind of high level thing, we might do something like that, where those in, so you could go from one adventure path into another, rather than writing a single adventure that's just a sequel to an existing adventure path.
I'd say come back to us in about 8 years. We'll have the 10th anniversary of the Dead Suns Adventure Path.
Oh, maybe
hardcover compilation.
Yeah, if we do it.
Sure. Yeah, take me on my word for that. Write it down. It's gonna happen.
Ooh, they're going to hold you to that. Just be
No,
careful.
it's not. I'm shaking my head no. It's clearly shaking my head no.
The second part of that question, that's a similar vein from Doc Wash, is there any plans to do standalone modules like what was in the Pathfinder module line?
Sure. Yeah.
There are no plans at this point. We obviously at Paizo we're doing Pathfinder and Starfinder, and there's been a lot of focus on Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is coming out this year, of course. So we're still a relatively small team within that working on Starfinder, and I think we'd like to get them eventually. It's just a matter of having the resources, and our 2 best adventure developers are working on our adventure paths. So never say never, but we don't have any plans currently in place.
I'd like to add that we're also an objectively small team. So, we're a tiny team.
Okay,
so.
Objectively so. But it is something, it's kind of, it's good that we have adventures with the Adventure Pass. It would be great to be able to have standalones too.
Get the free RPG Day products.
Yeah.
Of course,
right now is what we
Starfinder
do.
Society scenarios work that way too.
Exactly.
You don't have to play actual organized play to use those scenarios.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
They make a good night's play.
Yeah, we were playing them.
Yeah.
Back up here again.
Hello.
This is sort of, I know, particularly because I'm a big fan of the Solarian class, I know that Owen's more the brain daddy on that one. But the sort of question I would have is, would we be seeing at some point further development on the Solarian in terms of the thematic nature of it in the setting and the discussion of the psychophilosophy, and maybe even like a rod magic item you can channel your stellar weapon through?
Not sure if that connects with the adventure paths per se, but unless we had something in.
In volume, the Forever Reliquary, which is 22, there is an article called Monasteries of the Galaxy, and there are, I believe, Chris, have you read that one yet? Have you gone through that one yet?
Yeah, I developed it, yeah.
There's at least one Solarian monastery, and then the Cos Monastery of the Empty Orbit from Absalom Station is mentioned in there, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. So there's some, that's more, I think a lot of that is more setting stuff.
Yeah,
right?
It's more thematic. I think there might be one Solarian item in that article. But.
One of the challenges, of course, is we have a whole galaxy of a setting, and it's like there's tons of stuff, like Solarians, like everything, and we'd love to get everything, but we can't always.
Is there a panel on comm?
No, not a specific panel on that, but yeah. Maybe sometime.
Maybe soon.
So similar to that Kingmaker question, Kingmaker is pretty famous for having a whole new style of campaign, and that you're building up an organization effectively. Are there any plans, especially with like your conspiracy AP, where you would be setting up an organization or some sort of an entity that the PCs can control outside of just their ship? Like possibly having lackeys or some other underlings that they would be able to use.
Corporation.
Yeah. Two of our ideas that we keep kind of like coming close to.
Rules for large scale. That's true.
Two ideas that we keep coming close to but never quite pulling the trigger on are a sandbox style terraform this planet, build a colony from scratch AP in some fashion. And one that I keep suggesting but keeps getting shot down, which is basically sort of on doing a Triaxis thing with the Dragon Corps there, and maybe sort of like, you get willed this corporation from a dead dragon, and now you've got to do all this corporate conspiracy stuff, corporate warfare between these dragon fights, and maybe you'd have lackeys or something like that, you'd be running a corporation. We get real close, and then we go, this one would be, we're a little more excited about the swarm killing people. They're on the list. We have that list. I'm just going to keep pointing to a sign here that says the list.
Hi, I'm Naomi. I know there's a bunch of other books in the main line, like the Character Operations Manual, that are like in the pipeline. Is there anything from those upcoming books that you're really excited to use in the APs?
The new classes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had just a micro stat block with someone that would have been a great biohacker, but it comes out way before comm, so I was like, okay, so just a regular Sharon then.
Yeah, that's one of the dangers of the production schedule, is that like about the Vanguard or whatever, and you want to make somebody a Vanguard, but you can't because comm won't be out when you're writing that part of the
It won't be out.
article.
The eventual will be out before the book comes out or something. So yeah, we're excited about that, for sure. What about you, Rob? You excited about anything?
Yeah, well, no, I think that's the same. There's going to be all sorts. And of course, as we have a new Alien Archive 3 coming out in the summer, so that's going to give us some more monsters that we can use in the APs as well. So, but I think the classes are going to be a big thing to kind of start bringing those into the world and the adventures.
Anything more about Solarians in comm?
We need to talk to Owen about that.
I know that there are
there's stuff for every single class.
Yes,
that's why I'm like, well, I don't know.
There's definitely stuff, and you might be interested in that.
Is there anything for Sheerans? No, of course there is.
So before I ask this question from Draco Bahamut, I thought you'd enjoy knowing that there's a conversation on about what would be the best name for a Starfinder Kingmaker spiritual successor. There's like Planet Maker and Emperor Maker. It seems like it's a pretty popular idea in Twitch. But moving along, Draco Bahamut asks, will the Threefold conspiracy get into more cyberpunk content too, or is it only alien conspiracies?
It's alien conspiracies. Although, if you're talking about being augmented against your will by the Greys, then maybe.
Yeah. If you want, cyberpunkish kind of conspiracy stuff, like the second volume of Signal of Screams, kind of gets into some of that transhumanism against your will kind of stuff.
That whole AP is transhumanism against your will.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
All right. So let's see. I'm scrolling up a bit from Troll Marine. I know it's a bit premature to ask, but is there any chance that we will ever see a video game RPG in Starfinder universe similar to Pathfinder Kingmaker?
That would be awesome.
I would love that.
We are not a computer game company, so those things tend to happen with licensed partners. They're like, hey, we got this great idea for a game. I don't have anything to announce, but obviously, yeah, that would be super cool. And, I don't know if the Kingmaker was really cool, the Kingmaker computer game, and if they were to come to us and say we want to do Starfinder, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But nothing to announce yet. We wouldn't announce it in this panel anyways, but we don't have anything to announce at this point.
But if you're a video game company out there,
Yeah.
come talk to Paizo about this.
Starfinder's still pretty relatively new, but I would love to do stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I think it would make a great video game.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of video games kind of coming out that feel kind of Starfindery just by accident in a lot of ways. I think the Outer Worlds and Journey to the Doomed Planet, Savage Planet, or something like that. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out that's kind of I'm very excited about playing, personally.
But not Starfinder.
But not Starfinder official. No.
So just sort of combine a few previous questions. Junk Lords of Akaton.
Junk Lords.
Junk Lords
Lords of
yeah.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
We're coming close up on time, and there aren't a whole lot of questions left. So how about we end it off by saying, what does your AP layout process look like? Like, how do you go through the steps of deciding what you want to do, and how does that outlining process go?
Sure, yeah. We start with a high-level pitch, basically.
Where we drag out the giant list.
We drag out the list, get the list, and there's a hooded monk who comes in with the book and brings the list
That's
in.
you, Jason.
Don't ruin the mystery.
We know it's you.
But it's very, very formal. Generally it's the three of us, so we'll sometimes bring in Owen or Amanda or Joe to sort of just like pick an overall idea that we're all very excited about and that we think we can get to 6 volumes with. And then we sort of break it down from there. The three of us sort of sit down. It's like, this
we
is
talk
volume
about
one.
it till Rob goes, oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
I like that.
It's cool.
Yeah. We all, whoever's going to be the developer is most excited about it. Whatever they're most excited about, and then what we can get narrowed down. And then we start honing in on individual volumes, what happens there. And once we sort of figure that out, and then we also have at least 1 or 2 brainstorms about titles. Like, what is it called? What are each volume called? And we have lots of lists about that.
We also have a brainstorm about back matter.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
And we have to, for both like the overall plots and the titles and stuff, we run that by Eric Mona, our publisher, because he's it has to get through me first, then it has to get through him. And he'll be like, that's a dumb title. And so they'll have to go back and come up with better things. We're like, no one knows what that word is. We can't do that, but we'll try to, get his interest in there. And once we have that sort
what's
of,
that?
and once we have that, then we start.
The developer writes an outline of each individual volume and a sort of a campaign overview outline. Then Rob approves that. And then whoever the developer is goes out and finds freelancers for the adventures, and whoever's working on the back matter finds freelancers for that, and we just sort of send that out and get it back, and then we develop it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And then it gets laid out.
And it gets laid out,
We make art orders for every volume too.
Yes.
Like
while we're developing,
and,
we do our briefs and
we approve sketches and. Then we also copy fit the volume.
Yeah, when it comes back, whether it's over or under, we get all that fit in, answer questions from the editors, all the nitty gritty
It goes
stuff.
to the editors, goes to the art team.
Yeah.
And, but our
everyone
stuff
works
is really
together.
just a lot of brainstorms and then getting those ideas coalesced until they actually make sense for a story.
Right.
Over
And
6
then when you
volumes.
get the writing back, you just say, "Oh, I'm just going to turn that up to 11."
Yeah, right.
Or turn it down to 11 sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's turned it down to 11. Yeah.
Hey, so I said we were all out of questions. Well, Twitch decided that they wanted to drop a ton. So how do you guys feel about a lightning
round? Go.
Lightning round.
Barathu lightning gun round.
There's about 100 people on Twitch.
Yeah,
so
you guys are very popular.
Lots of conversation.
First question from Laurie 7x3. Will we see the Absalom Station defense system in action someday?
Maybe.
Someday, maybe.
Let's see.
If only the Threefold Conspiracy evolved Absalom Station.
Oh, was there any cut content from an AP that you were particularly sad to see go?
Ooh.
And that now's your time to pitch it, I suppose.
Oh, Can I say that I'm sad to see something that Chris cut? Say something good. There was something that Joe wrote for his volume of Dawn of Flame that I think was would have been kind of cool, but it was too esoteric and it was a little too not enough room for it. The bomb defusing part of the puzzle thing.
Yeah.
It was a little too. I get it, and I totally get it, but like one day a puzzle.
Silver Scarab asks, will there be an adventure path someday that doesn't have a big evil bad guy you're fighting? Maybe something more lighthearted, like a Star Sugar Heart Love adventure path.
That is actually, I think it is slightly on the list. It's on my list to do a Josie and the Pussycats style series of maybe interconnected mysteries.
You still need a villain at the end, though.
You don't need a villain. You need to find him. Yeah.
You just need the guy to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That wasn't for you
kids.
Exactly.
Yeah. But if you have like 6 just sort of serialized things, you don't necessarily have a big villain at the end. But you could. Right. You also could.
It's a villain that you don't have to shoot, though.
Yeah. That's true.
So in Starfinder, you created Triune and you added him into the universe. Have you thought about killing off a god?
That got shot down. I'll tell you that much. We had an idea. Can we talk about this a little bit? We thought about something like that. We were like, the 3 of us kind of got really excited about it, and Eric kind of shot it down.
Because we have some connections with Pathfinder, we don't want to too much. But I mean, there's lots of gods, and I would say again, never say never.
Yeah.
Ooh, we could kill Triune.
Oh, not kill Triune.
Pithica42 from Twitch asks, what is a realistic starting point for someone who wants to start contributing to an adventure path?
Oh, yeah. What I like to do is when I'm developing back matter, a monster or 2, or we have a Codex of Worlds in the back of the very volume, which is just a 500-word piece, which is pretty easy. Or if you're into a little more mechanical stuff, if we need just sort of a random starship for the covers. Those are all great, very brief places to start.
Also, send us an email and tell us you want to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's the main part. There will be a seminar. I mean, Pithica, it won't be streamed, but I'm about to go to another seminar that's called Writing for Starfinder. If that gets recorded for No Direction, listen to that. All right. Okay.
I think we're out of time. So thanks to everybody here, and thanks to everybody on Twitch, and we'll see y'all later.
See you around. Bye.